The Bowman Landes tale is truly an American story of how hard work, Christian values, and perseverance can lead to bountiful success. Since 1943, the Bowman Landes Turkey Farm has produced some of the finest turkey and turkey-related products in the United States. In an age where corporate farms dominate the agricultural landscape, Bowman Landes remains family-owned and operated for more than 3 generations. It all started in 1942, when Orville Bowman placed a phone call to a young machinist named Dennis Landes, inquiring for employment as a farmhand. In those days, no interstates existed. Most families had one car if you were lucky, and travel from town to town was much more arduous than it was today. Being from Brookville, Ohio, it was no surprise that Dennis wasn't interested at first.
As far as that's concerned, how the phone call came, I was working at National Cash Register in Dayton, but I knew I didn't want to get my gray hair there, and I got interested in getting out as soon as I could.
After encouragement from his father, Dennis made the long trip to New Carlisle, Ohio, to see what Orville had to offer.
Dad thought he saw an opportunity, I think, and with kind of carefully chosen words, he said, well, you at least ought to go talk to the man. So that's what we did. I came up that gangplank there to the house, and Mrs. Bowman said, well, he's up here on the other side of the road building a brewer house in the barn. So I went over there, and he had a new farm all-age tractor sitting at the bottom of the barn hill, and I had grew up at home mostly using horses, and so the neighbor's tractors always made music in my ears. And we talked a little, and he said, well, I need a tractor driver. So I hired him and came up here.
At that time, Orville farmed 17 acres of apple and peach trees, his brother and father's land, and 2 other rented farms. Orville needed help farming all of his land while focusing his efforts on raising turkeys. At that time, turkeys were only eaten 1 to 2 times per year, Thanksgiving, and to a lesser extent, Christmas. Items such as turkey lunch meat, sausages, burgers did not exist, so the business was extremely seasonal. Orville offered Dennis $15 per week and free room and board to join him, with one caveat: that Orville could keep $10 of Dennis's $15 per week until the end of the year after turkey season was complete. In 1942, Dennis accepted Orville's offer, packed up his 1942 Chevrolet, and moved into the upstairs residence of the Bowman's home in New Carlisle, Ohio. Shortly after moving in, a local carpenter warned the Bowmans that the house was structurally unfit and they needed to build a new home. Heeding the warning, Orville Bowman and Dennis Landes cleaned up an old chicken house and moved in while they tore down the old residence and built a new home.
Well, I was able to sleep in the other house over here, so we had our meals here in the chicken house, and it wasn't too bad. She was a good cook, and they furnished my meals and got along all right.
It was the height of World War II, and critical resources such as steel, wood, sugar, aluminum were rationed for military purposes. Most able-bodied young men were fighting in Europe or the Pacific. Because of the war, virtually no help and little resources were available.
I know one thing, that we had a living, it was hard to find places to live. Houses were very scarce. You couldn't rent, you couldn't buy. We finally went, when we were married, why, we tried about everything. Even, then they had these little, what they call them, bungalow-like things you could rent to live in.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, I guess.
we just couldn't get one of those, and that's, no refrigerator, couldn't buy any. Mrs. Bowman and I went to a sale, and you put your name in
At a ceiling price.
could sell it.
At an auction, it soon got the ceiling price, and that was all the higher it dare sell for. So all interested parties would put their little piece of paper with their name in a hat. Go ahead.
So Mrs. Bowman drew my name. And so then we got this used refrigerator.
Well, they drew Mrs. Bowman's name, you mean?
Yeah, that's right.
And she said you could have
She
it.
had a refrigerator, of course. And when we were married, Dennis, his folks had 2 stoves, and so they gave us an electric stove, because you couldn't buy. Just couldn't buy them. Can't imagine, can you?
Under the guidance of Charlie Hicksenheiser, the Bowmans and Dennis Landis had to tear down the old home by themselves, recycle the materials, and construct a new home from scratch, all while managing their day jobs. Despite all the hardships in 1943, Bowman and Landis was able to rebuild their home, successfully tend to all the cows, crops, and orchards, and most significantly, dress more than 100 turkeys in the basement for sale at Thanksgiving. By the end of 1943, Dave Bowman sold all his farm equipment to Dennis, and Orville had allowed Dennis to purchase baby turkey poults to raise. This gave Dennis Landis a stake in the farming operations. Pretty soon, local vendors started billing them as Bowman and Landis. After the home on the farm was rebuilt, Dennis and his new wife Ruth moved into living quarters prepared by Dave Bowman and his wife in the upstairs of their home. During the winter months, Orville and his wife moved to California. Kenneth, Orville's brother, would often help with the farming operations. In 1946, demand for turkey was weak, and prices had dipped to record lows. Despite their efforts, turkey buyers were turning them down, and there was an abundance of turkeys left. Kenneth Bowman, Orville's brother, was a fairly astute business person and had a revolutionary idea. What if they started selling fully dressed turkeys directly to grocery stores and to the retail public? Kenneth reached out to Red Shear, the local meat buyer for Liberal Markets, a large grocery chain in southwest Ohio, and asked about selling Bowman Landes dressed turkeys in his stores. Mr. Shear loved the idea, and Bowman Landes hitched a 2-wheel trailer to their car, put a metal tank on the trailer, packed their turkeys in ice, and began delivering them to Liberal Markets.
June of 46, they took their family and stayed until March of 47 and left the business with me, and I just wasn't quite big enough to handle all that, the way it went especially. But Kenneth helped me out. He was more of a businessman than I was, and he went along, like I said, to Liberal Markets and was able to get them some sold. And that was really the beginning of any amount of dressing turkeys that we did. But from then on, we kind of pushed that to dress them what we could and learned how to package them to make them attractive and so forth. A couple of years after that, some representatives from Kroger Company came out and looked at our plant and so forth, and they said, if you have any extra turkeys, we'd like to have a few. Well, we saw to it that we had some extra and began to sell to Kroger, and we've sold some to them ever since.
Kenneth Bowman also reached out to nearby local companies and the general public, offering to sell dressed packaged turkeys to them directly. Bowman Landes was not only able to sell its abundance of turkeys, but also garner a much higher price than what they received from traditional buyers or brokers. In 1948, Orville, wanting to return to California full-time, offered to sell the remainder of the farm to Kenneth Bowman and Dennis Landis. Despite all the warnings from friends, Kenneth and Dennis relied on their Christian faith and turned to Ecclesiastes 4, verse 9 to 12 for guidance. 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falleth, for he hath not one to lift him up. Kenneth and Dennis Landis bought out Orville Bowman at the beginning of 1948 and formed a 50-50 partnership. The Bowman Landes Turkey Farm was formally founded. The first year of Kenneth and Dennis's partnership was stellar. All turkeys were completely sold out 2 weeks before Christmas, and prices were at an all-time high. In addition, harvest from the farm was plentiful and profitable. This modest success continued into the 1950s.
Being the two of us, one of us would work in the evening and wind things up after the day's dressing. The other one would go to bed early and get up about 2 o'clock in the morning and go out and hang the turkeys on the drain line, get them out of the ice water. They were cold by that time. And we had mostly school children come in, and we'd package the day's kill there from 2 to school time.
As Bowman and Landis became more successful, profits were reinvested into new state-of-the-art equipment and infrastructure, such as tractors, building improvements, and industrial equipment to make feeding and dressing turkeys much easier and more efficient. The Bowman Landis farm became one of the first farms to have an automatic electric feed mixer installed that could mix and feed more than 20,000 turkeys.
Well, we were at a good time. When we first started, we sold most of the turkeys alive to somebody else, but we would dress a few in the basement of the house here for some neighbors and a few friends that wanted them, and we just sort of felt that taking the turkey from the cradle to the gravy would be the way to do it. And so we just kept building slowly as time went along, and invested, as you say, for profits. We would invest back into the business, and just had a slow but steady growth. And that was right at the time that people were learning that the turkey could be cut up into pieces and didn't have to buy the whole bird. And we got in on sort of the ground floor of that, of cutting them up and selling parts and making products out of the meat.
Bowman Landis also decided to take out their peach and apple orchards to focus on the more profitable turkey business. By the mid-1950s, with this capital investment, Bowman Landis Farm was recognized as a technology leader in the industry. The 1960s proved to be an innovative and prosperous decade and a transitional period for the Bowman Landes Turkey Farm. The 1960s saw new acquisition of farmland, investments in cold storage freezers on site, plant additions, and new state-of-the-art equipment. In 1963, Bowman Landis was recognized by Dayton Power and Light as one of the first electrified farms when they installed electricity to power the farm's grain dryers and mixers, and by 1964, this equipment allowed Bowman Landis to experiment with new products. Bowman and Landis created boneless roasts by implementing a process that removed the bones from the turkeys. The farm also tried smoking a small portion of its turkeys and storing them for sale. Both of these new product innovations were popular and successful, making 1964 a banner year. Bowman and Landis began producing an abundance of turkeys each year, which were placed in cold storage and sold the next year through its on-site store and at local markets. Turkey demand was so strong that Bowman and Landis no longer held back any turkeys for breeders, but instead purchased all new poults from an outside hatchery.
When we'd get the baby turkeys, it took a lot of time to care for them when they're young. So I can remember going out in the evenings around dark and putting the turkeys to bed with Dad, and we'd walk through the barn and just it's pretty dark. There's a little glow of the heaters that are there, and the birds, we wanted them to be all nice and tucked in around the heat. So sometimes we'd have to pick them up, move them a little bit, and just the quietness of going to sleep.
By the end of the 1960s, Bowman Landis constructed an entirely new building to house a new dressing plant, large freezer areas, and dry storage rooms. The total cost of the building was $26,000, and it was equipped with $20,000 in equipment. By 1970, Bowman Landes was now one of the most advanced and preeminent turkey farms in Ohio. By the early 1970s, Stan Landes and Carl Bowman had shown an interest in joining the family business. Both had been working on the farm in various capacities since they were children.
Well, the worst part was we had to get up very early in the morning. I think it was 3, 4 o'clock, and we'd start packaging turkeys before we went to school. And so there was a lot of grumbling going on in the household about, I don't want to get up, but we did. And so we would package turkeys until 7:30 or something like that, when we'd pretty much be done. Then we'd go to school and then come home and work sometimes in the evening a little bit as well. And that only went on for a week or 10 days, so it wasn't like as a young kid you couldn't keep up with it. But it was a lot of hard work for our fathers, our mothers, and all the kids as we got older. I remember one time being so sleepy at school I fell asleep in class, and they told me to just go home. So I came home, went to bed.
By 1974, both Stan and Carl purchased shares of Bowman Landes to become partial owners of the business, along with Dennis and Kenneth.
Grew up in it. I saw what I had liked, an attractive lifestyle with my father and Mr. Bowman as they worked together. There was a lot of liberties that they had, such as traveling, church work, and things went on at the farm. When my father or Mr. Bowman, either one, both active in their own churches, when there was work to be done there, they went. It didn't matter, and things went on and prospered. Someone was there to take care of it. I spent 2 years from 66 to 68 purchasing department at Miami Valley Hospital, and that was a little chance to get away from home, kind of see how things were, and that just congealed things for me that I think this would be a good place for me and to raise a family.
The Bowman Landes Turkey Farm continued to experience growth throughout the 1970s, purchasing a new farm in West Liberty, Ohio, as well as Stan and Carl constructing a new building on the main farm property. The store became busy enough to employ a full-time employee year-round, and the farm made turkey deliveries year-round to local grocery stores and restaurants throughout the Miami Valley region.
Even though he was a very conservative man, in many ways he was progressive in his thinking about doing business. He built a house. He put in the first generator, a Delco generator, which gave them electricity, before power even came out to the farm. And so he's willing to try new things. And I think that's the way we always thought, is if we could find a way to have something that made our jobs easier, our product better, and if we could do it in a way that we could afford it, we should do it.
In addition to its traditional dressed turkeys, Bowman Landes started to produce and distribute more of its specialized products, such as roasted boneless turkeys, turkey breasts, smoked turkeys, and ground turkeys. As turkey became more of an accepted household item, Bowman Landes stayed ahead of the demand curve by offering new and innovative turkey products. Bowman Landes continued to reinvest in new technology and equipment. A new shop constructed by Carl and Stan was built on the premises. It included a new office, upstairs storage, a smoker and a cooker area, as well as a beautiful new retail area. Steve Landes, who was very active in the business most of his life, became part owner of Bowman Landes at the end of 1990.
I knew from a young age that this was what I wanted to do. Of course, growing up here, it just was a way of life, and I enjoyed it. And growing up on the farm was just a tremendous blessing as far as learning opportunities that are there, because you're into so many different things.
The Bowman Landes Turkey Farm was now a full-service, vertically integrated farm that handles turkeys, as Dennis Landis likes to say, from cradle to gravy. Bowman Landes grows and mixes its own feed, carefully monitors every aspect of raising its turkeys, and dresses and packages its turkeys on premises. Today, Bowman Landes continues its rich tradition. The farm is not only recognized as a top-quality producer of turkeys and turkey-related products, but also as a technological and environmental leader in the Ohio farming community.
We hope to keep this farm for other generations, and the only way we can do that is to protect it. To keep the soil here, to not put pollutants in the ground, to make the smallest carbon footprint possible. And that's why we've really believed in using solar to produce electricity, to do the soil practices that we do so that we don't lose soil. And so it costs money, but long term, it's really a great investment. And I think we all believe that and live our lives that way.
Bowman Landes has received awards from the state of Ohio and the Southwest District Soil and Water Conservation Service, as well as the prestigious Environmental Stewardship Award by the Ohio Poultry Association.
We've always just maintained slow, steady growth. And if you look at where we were in the 50s, 60s, we just grow slowly. And I think that would be my vision for the future. Repeat customers and word of mouth, it just doesn't get any better than that.
Our hope is that the things that Dennis and my father started in terms of the ethics that we have about treating our customers properly, treating employees properly, treating the way we treat each other properly, that is going to be such a factor as we move ahead with new players in the Bowman and the Landes story.
True Christian principles was what our business was founded on. I was reared that way, and I didn't know anything different.